This is my free BMW 335i with an N54 engine, twin turbo baby. This is a table full of parts. And this is where those parts go. Today we're gonna work on getting this thing put back together. If you missed the last video, we just finished cleaning all the carbon off the back of these intake valves, and we put the oil filter housing and the oil cooler back together. So now that we have the intake valves all cleaned up, I wanna put the intake manifold back on. Now I did not tear this car apart. A viewer of mine gave this car to me partially torn down. He had taken the intake manifold off to do the high pressure fuel pump, and that's when I got the car from him. I haven't worked on an N54 for probably at least 4 years, 5 years, so it's gonna take a little bit of time for me to figure out where everything goes. Although the exterior of this intake manifold is a little dirty, the inside is quite clean, so we're just gonna run it as is and clean it up after it's on the car. We are gonna clean up these intake ports though and get these old gaskets out and throw fresh ones in. Someone put silicone or something on here, and this is not necessary. You never have to put anything like this on intake manifold gaskets. So my game plan with this car is not a full-blown restoration, everything's perfect. My game plan is to put this engine back together, figure out where everything goes, and then slap some oil in it, throw a battery in the back, fire this thing up and see how it runs. I've never heard this car run before. I don't know what the turbos sound like. I don't know what the health of the engine is like, so before I replace the turbos, I just want to fire it up. Anthony told me that the turbos were bad, but like I said, I haven't heard the car run, so I kind of want to hear it for myself. So to put this manifold back in, I pulled these studs out of the cylinder head. They're all studs except for the front one. The front one is a bolt, and it just makes life way easier for putting this intake manifold back in and taking it out. You don't want to over torque these. Click that harness back on to the bottom of the manifold. Now we'll throw our nuts on and the one bolt. Now if you do BMW intake manifolds, buy a magnetic 11mm socket. All BMW intake manifolds are 11mm, and it is so easy to drop these down underneath the intake manifold and lose them, and you never have to worry about dropping your nuts. It's a worthy investment. And then on something like this, it's good to torque in to out. And I'm just gonna torque these snug with this little 1/4-inch ratchet. You don't need a lot of torque for these, just a little quarter turn. Those studs are pretty thin, and so you don't need to go crazy. I've seen these studs snap off from people torquing them too hard. And I think we can put the throttle body in now. Before we put this in, I'm just gonna clean the throttle blade, just with a little bit of brake cleaner. New throttle body gasket. Put a little bit of lube on this piece here, on this connector, because this is where the purge valve or the fuel tank vent valve connects up to the throttle body and then gets put into the intake stream. Magnetic 10mm socket for getting those bottom throttle body bolts. I'm telling you. Now same story on this throttle body, right? We don't need to go crazy tight. These are bolts going into a plastic manifold, so you just need to get them snug, tighten them equal and opposite. Push that purge valve connector on. Connector for the throttle bodies right here. Okay, I'm gonna ditch these air cleaner connectors and go with the stock setup because one, I'm kind of pro stock, and two, I need to get this thing legal to pass smog, and these aren't gonna help me pass smog. I need the stock air box, baby. It's starting to come back to me now. I was like, okay, I know these are oxygen sensor plugs, but where do they go? But then you can kind of see this thing has a little bit of memory in the wire. And this thing wants to go right here where this little thing goes. And then these come up underneath here and they go along the fuel rail. This piece goes down to the vacuum pump. It's up there. That looks about right. We'll see. This harness goes to this connector back here. I forget what this is. Maybe the heater for the PCV. I got this charge pipe connected to the throttle body. You don't want to lubricate these charge pipe connections, at least the rubber sides, because I've done that before and they blow out on me, high boost pressure. So it's starting to really come back to me now. We got the charge pipe connected. We got this little guy connected. It's got those little 1/4 turn silver locks on it. Then I was getting the charge pipe connected to the intercooler, but I broke my hose clamp. What I'm thinking right now is I want to try to fire this thing up today. I need to get the fuel rail installed. I kind of want to go to the store, buy a hose clamp, buy some oil, throw some coolant in this thing, fire it up and see if she actually runs. So I think I'm going to challenge myself to that today. And so the way this direct injection high pressure fuel pump system works is low pressure fuel comes in here to the high pressure fuel pump. That's ran off of the back of the vacuum pump. and then the high pressure fuel comes up to this hard line, and then it goes into the fuel rail, and then the fuel lines run off this and go into all the direct injectors. Ah, these go across. I remember now. Fuel rail goes down. Just loosely throw this on. You don't really want to snug up this fuel rail crazy tight right off the bat because you need a little bit of wiggle room to get all these lines on. I remember the hardware for this fuel rail are these black 11mm bolts. Another great example to have that magnetic 11mm socket. I'm just going to loosely throw these in so we have a little bit of play in the rail. Oh, we need to replace this sensor before we plug that in. Oh, this runs down the front. And do fuel lines next. Pull our tape off for all our direct injectors. Poor little guys, they've been exposed to the atmosphere for too long. I think we need to index these injectors as well. Pull the plugs and boroscope it before I fire it up too. Let's see here, which way are these gonna go? These you gotta really play around with. Fuel lines can be a little finicky sometimes. 14? 14, we still got it. We still got it. Yeah, the threads are just a little gummy on this one. I'm gonna try to run it down. You want to be careful with these though. You don't want to strip this fuel rail or these lines. I've never had to buy any, but I would assume they would be pretty expensive. Feels a lot better. No matter what BMW you're working on, you always got to flop this damn harness out of the way. They love putting harnesses in your way, don't they? Snug up these fuel lines. Actually, before we do that, let's torque the fuel rail. And again, just light torque with a 1/4" ratchet. You don't need to go hard and heavy. This bolt right here, I can see daylight underneath it. So I'm gonna put a quick torque on, nope. So before I go any further, I'm gonna go through and double check all the torque specs on the valve cover while I still have decent access. 10 Newton meters is fine. Uh-oh. Good thing we checked. Oh my goodness. All right, now I need to take off these ground straps because these ground straps attach to a stud, and that stud also holds the valve cover down. There we go. They're 10 mil, but you can't have your socket connected when you put them on. Put the socket on it like that, and then just capture the last little bit with your ratchet. That one was loose. All right, valve cover's tight. Now where were we? We just snugged up the fuel rail. We just put on all these lines. We need to tighten these up. 14 mil wrench. All right, let's go see what the puppy's doing. Oh, there she is. There she is. Hi, sweetheart. Hello. Keeping an eye on the chickens while they hang out under this beautiful flowering azalea, I think it is. Spring is here, folks, and I'm all about it. We got a new genuine fuel pressure sensor back here, so let's pop this off, get this swapped out. Boom, connected. We got these little wastegate actuators that need vacuum, and then these two are gonna come up and over. I don't remember where these get routed, but I think they go across and plug into these vacuum actuators for the turbos. And these wires go under here. You go there. These are all missing their connectors. Little push style connectors. You go onto the Vano solenoid. Okay, and then O2 sensors. These come around. Those didn't like each other. That's why. This is an aftermarket O2 sensor. I can tell just by the loom. That's why the fit is so crummy. So it's technically the right sensor. I forget how these vacuum hoses route, but I think it's something like this. I'm not positive, but this looks pretty clean for now. Because this car doesn't have the factory cowl with it. All these wires aren't going to be tucked cleanly out of place. And then one thing I forgot to tighten was this main nut for the fuel rail. Hey, I found one of the connectors. Oh, this is for the freaking overflow hose. Good thing we got a connector on there now. I don't really see any loose connectors that I need to button up. Let's pull the coils, pull the spark plugs, and boroscope down the cylinders. Now, a trick for getting these ignition coils out is you take a pocket screwdriver, put it right here between the connector and the coil. You can wiggle them out pretty easy. And then when you go back on, put that on, close it, and then I go down here and I lever it that way till it locks into place. And another trick to get the ignition coils out, I put a screwdriver through here. Sometimes those connectors will come off if they're really stuck. Makes it easier than pulling them out by hand. Bosch ignition coils. And for these N54 spark plugs, it takes this 14mm socket. It's a 14mm 12 point with a little rubber bit in there to hold the spark plug. It's kind of unique. That didn't feel tight. Plug is new. Super light spark plugs. I've never seen those before. That was loose. Good thing we pulled them. I didn't remember this engine having these sleeves, but it does. But this is how I install them. I take a flathead, big flathead, and I pop them down. Now these don't actually seal oil. They're just simply like a heat sink for the spark plugs and the ignition coils. Kind of shields them. I bought this boroscope a while ago off Amazon. It was like 20 or 30 bucks, and it plugs into a cell phone. So I'm gonna plug this into my other iPhone, my personal, and we'll send it down and see what we see. See, there's a little bit of walnut in there. I think this attachment here is like a little side view camera lens. So let's pull this up. Oh, it's a little baby mirror. That's cute. Got some nice cross hatching still. Nice cross hatch all the way around. Number 3 looks good. A little bit of wear right there from the piston, but still got lots of cross hatch. It's just that dull spot right there. It's dirty, but the cross hatch is still good. Number 6, a little bit of scoring there on the cylinder wall. It's that mark right there. Still some cross hatch present. They don't look too bad. A little bit of wear. Bottom of the piston on number 6. Ooh, brother, what's that? Can't tell what that is, but maybe it's carbon that came out of number 6. 5 looks good. 4 looks good. 3 looks good. 2 looks good. And 1 looks good. Now we're just checking for major signs of failure. Mostly I just wanted to look for walnut shell. All in all though, pretty sweet little boroscope. Now to clean these plugs up. I've never heard of super light plugs, but for now I'm gonna use them because I don't want to spend money on new plugs, but we can swap them out in the future. And torque these plugs to 25 Newton meters. Brother, ooh. All right, I think I'm gonna go buy 7 quarts of oil and some hose clamps. I got enough coolant to make it work. And we'll throw some oil in this thing. I'll probably rob the battery out of my E46, put it in this one. I don't even know what battery it takes. I need to get into ISTA and see what it needs. And hopefully we can get this thing to crank over today. That'd be pretty cool. I also got this coolant flange that I need to get installed into here. Little Mickey Mouse aluminum coolant flange. Sirhan, you just emailed me about this, and Anthony included one with the car. So we need to get that on and get this hose attached. But this O-ring is a square ring now. So I'm gonna bring this with me to the parts store, see if I can find an O-ring for this thing. Sage! There she is, hi! Sage, you wanna go for a ride? Okay, let's go. Load up. Good girl. Watch your tail. Watch out, chickens. We're gonna go to the parts store, and then we're gonna go get some cash and get some tacos. Bradley's got some clamps, but they're not much bigger. We got 2 5-quart jugs of some Castrol high mileage 530. It was on sale. And then we got some hose clamps, and we got an O-ring for the coolant flange. You know where we are? Speedy Taco! What's in there, huh? That a burrito? I got a belly full of food, and we got some supplies for this car. Let's get back to work, baby. We can get this charge pipe back on now. Okay, now we gotta put these suckers in. I ain't afraid of lube. We about to put the air box in this thing? I think so. Let's see what it looks like. Airbox looks pretty clean. Filter could use changing. It's a BMW filter, which is nice to see. Good enough for now. Starting to look like a car again. Woo! Next order of business, I got this coolant flange, the Mickey Mouse pipe. Terrible Mickey Mouse impression. And that goes right down here. So we're gonna get that cleaned up, get that installed, and then hose clamp this hose. I think this goes to the thermostat. A radiator hose, put the fan in, put some coolant in it, pressure test it, dump the oil, fill the oil. I think this O-ring is just too large. This O-ring's too large. We're gonna have to use the old O-ring. Sometimes you gotta do what you gotta do. We'll pressure test it, see if it's leaking after. Now we connect this hose, up a radiator hose, put a quick scuff on this coolant hose connection. I think we can put the cooling fan in it. I'm gonna pop this hose here because this is very fragile. You can break it when you're trying to put the cooling fan in. And if I remember correctly, this cooling fan is kind of a pain. Pretty tight fit with the oil cooler. Now there is some evidence of a coolant leak down there at this hose, so I'll probably just run water because I know I'm gonna have to open the system back up again. Okay, now we go up. See if there's any oil in this thing. I'm gonna put an aftermarket drain plug. Supposed to be a 17. Oh, coolant? I just saw coolant. Oh, it must have been from the oil filter housing. And then it sank to the bottom. Well, there was some oil in there. She was not empty. I popped the oil cap too. Car came with a new drain plug, correct size, magnetic tip, and a new washer. I'm gonna go up and crack the oil filter. Somebody drove over something crazy because you can see scars on the lower control arm on both sides, and this underbody panel was ripped up like they drove over a short divider or short curb. I also see a snapped off oil pan bolt. You can tell a lot from the underside of a car. If you ever see any collisions on like the subframe or the center of the car underbody panels, like, you know. There we go. No way. Oil pan stripped out. That's what this is. This is an oversized. We might not even be able to run this thing. Probably gonna need a new oil pan. Dang, man. No wonder it's an 18. Okay. Well, that one tightened up for the meantime, so at least we can run the car. But when I drop the pan to do the pan gasket, I'll probably have to replace the oil pan. It's better than cutting new threads and trying to tap the pan and stuff. Put a filter in it, put some oil in it. Oh, I still gotta swap the battery. I gotta scab the battery out of my 46. Earl, cooling system, battery. Finger punch, ow, finger punch. Okay, there's 5 quarts. Finger punch. Right on the money. All right, now we fill up coolant. I like to fill them till it comes out of that bleed screw hole. We're gonna run the electronic bleed after. All right, I scabbed the battery out of Brenda, poor girl. I'll slap it into the E90. BMW batteries suck. Since Tender wants to be in the shot, there you are. All right, guys, we have power. The trunk light is on. We got blue footwell lights. All right, we get to try to start this car. Are you guys ready? Because I'm not. Ready? Set? Not yet. I think she's gonna go. Whew. I think she's gonna go. Ready? Almost. she's so smoky. She's so smoky. She's a runner. Holy cow. Smoked out my garage. Woo! God, that sounded terrible. Woo! I just smoked out my entire garage. Holy cow. Yeah, buddy. Let's let this air out for a sec. We'll try it again. Oh my goodness. What a first start. That thing sounds terrible. Making sure these injectors are tight. This one could have used some more torque. Those injectors needed snugging up. It went into limp mode, and it sounds like the turbos aren't building boost. Once it goes into limp mode, it idles pretty good. We got the Ethernet plugged into the ICOM. Let's see if she will plug into ISTA. This thing's actually connecting to ISTA. Yeah, baby. What does the fault say? Sick. Display fault memory. Apologies for the glare. My overhead lighting is just too badass. Let's see here. We got fuel pressure faults. We got a fuel pump fault. We got misfires on 3, 4, 5, several cylinders. We have fuel injector activation on cylinder 4 and 6. Intelligent battery sensor fault. Fuel injector fault. These are for run flat detection, I believe. And other than that, so we're just looking at fuel faults. Fuel pump, O2 sensor, cylinders. Let's delete it. Okay, so we deleted everything. We have hard faults for run flat transmitters, front left, front right, fog lights, FRM. All right, now we're gonna run it and then rescan for codes. I got a little bit of camera life left. We need it to fault. Start vehicle test. Nothing for the DME. Okay, I'm gonna run it one more time. Now that it's in limp mode, it gave me the half power icon. It's idling. I'm curious to see what the fault is, but I'll show you the RPMs real quick. Got a brake light, flashing tire pressure light, and then limp mode light. Wastegates are rattling like crazy. All right, let's shut this thing up and go check faults. Hey, Smokey! One more vehicle test. All right, we got a new fault and fuel pressure, fuel pump. Maybe the high pressure fuel pump? Low pressure fuel system delivery rate out of range. Fault currently not present. Delivery rate outside of range. Fuel pressure plausibility. Pressure too low. Interesting. Fuel pressure too low. Well, next best step is to go through test functions for the high pressure fuel system. Test plan had me bleed the pressure out of the rail. Okay, below 5 bar. All right, I need more pressure out. That's all the pressure. So it needs me to reduce the fuel pressure in the system. I already cracked it loose. There is no pressure in the rail, but it's still saying that I have over 13 bar. So I know what I need to do next as far as test plans go. We're gonna jump into that next day. Well, that's gonna wrap this one up, folks. It's been a fun, full day of wrenching. We made a lot of progress. I mean, We put this entire engine back together and we got it to run. As far as answering the question, will it run? She runs, just not very good. We have a fuel issue to chase down. She also needs some turbos. She needs a new oil pan because that drain plug is stripped out and the gasket is just dumping oil. I hope you enjoyed, or I hope you learned something new. And as always, folks, I will see you on my next day off. Cheers, everybody. Now it's time to clean up all this mess.